Why avoidants get addicted to people who communicate like this. Avoidants are some of the most emotionally guarded people you'll ever try to connect with. They pull back when you get too close, act unbothered when you know something is clearly wrong, and often make you feel like your emotional investment is completely one-sided. But here's the twist. While they may seem allergic to deep connection on the surface, that doesn't mean they're immune to it. In fact, some avoidants don't just open up to certain people. They become quietly, almost obsessively drawn to them. They just won't say it out loud. Not to you, not to their friends, not even to themselves in an honest moment. It's like they're caught in a current they didn't see coming. Someone finally showed up who didn't chase them, didn't pressure them, and didn't make love feel like a test they were always failing. And something in them couldn't let that go. If you ever wonder why an avoidant who seemed completely closed off suddenly couldn't stop coming back to one specific person, this video might finally give you the answer. Let's talk about the 5 specific communication habits that avoidants quietly become addicted to, and why their nervous system responds to these approaches like nothing else ever has. Most people trying to connect with an avoidant are doing it completely wrong. Not because they don't care enough, but because the instincts that work in normal relationships, reaching out more, expressing feelings openly, asking where things stand, are the exact things that make an avoidant shut down faster. The harder you try in the way you've been taught to try, the further they go. And nobody tells you this. So you just keep doing it, wondering why nothing is working, assuming the problem is you. But the problem was never how much you cared. It was always the language you were using to show it. Research from the University of California found that people with avoidant attachment styles show measurably higher stress responses during conversations that involve direct emotional pressure or requests for vulnerability. Their body is not being dramatic. It is genuinely registering closeness as danger. This is not a personality flaw. It is a nervous system that learned, usually very early in life, that needing people leads to disappointment or rejection. So it built a wall and called the wall independence. And here's the part that most people miss. That wall is not aimed at you specifically. It was built long before you arrived. I work with people navigating these kind of relationships constantly, and the pattern I see more than any other is this. Someone kind, emotionally generous, and completely exhausted is pouring everything they have into someone who seems to give almost nothing back. And what makes it so painful is that in most of those cases, the avoidant actually does feel something real. They're just running a completely different operating system, and nobody handed either person the translation guide. The person trying to connect keeps turning up the volume on their emotions, and the avoidant keeps turning down the dial on their availability. And both of them end up lonelier than when they started. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what that translation guide looks like, why certain communication habits do not just reach avoidance, but make them come back again and again, more open each time, in a way that nothing else ever managed to do. Let's get into it. The first habit is speaking to what they do, not what they feel. Avoidants live in a near-constant low-grade fear of being emotionally cornered. The second a conversation moves toward their inner world, how they feel, what they want, where this is going, their nervous system fires a warning signal, and the shutters come down. It is automatic. But someone who consistently notices their actions instead of interrogating their emotions bypasses that alarm entirely. Instead of saying, "I feel like you don't care," they say, "I notice you always check in after my hard days. That means something to me." That single shift changes everything. The avoidant does not brace. They do not deflect. They actually receive it. And because avoidants almost exclusively show love through actions rather than words, remembering small details, showing up quietly, doing things without being asked, being seen for those things it's differently than any declaration of feeling ever could, they think, "This person understands me without me having to explain myself." That thought is genuinely addictive to someone who has spent most of their relational life feeling fundamentally misread. The second habit is expressing needs without attaching blame to them. Most avoidants carry a deep, mostly unconscious belief that other people's emotional pain is somehow their fault and their burden to fix. Every relationship they've had has quietly confirmed this. Someone always ends up hurt, and somehow the avoidant always ends up feeling like the reason. So when someone expresses a need without making the avoidant feel like a criminal for not already meeting it, something in them shifts at a level they cannot fully explain. Instead of, "You never let me in and it makes me feel invisible," This person says, I do better when there's a little more consistency. That's just how I'm wired. Same need, completely different landing. The avoidant's whole body is braced for the guilt that never comes. And when it doesn't come, when the need is just stated plainly, without the subtext of, you are failing me, the relief they feel is profound. That relief, experienced enough times with the same person, becomes something they actively seek out. They start coming to that person first when something is wrong, not because they have suddenly transformed into someone emotionally open, but because this is the one place being honest does not cost them their sense of self. The third habit is being genuinely comfortable with silence and slow responses. Avoidants process internally, and they process slowly. When someone sends a message and then immediately follows it with hello, or, did I say something wrong? The avoidant does not think, oh, they care about me. They think, now I have to manage this too, and they pull back further. But someone who sends something real and then simply waits, unbothered, not spiraling, not following up with anxiety, is communicating something the avoidant almost never experiences from other people. Trust, not the performed kind, the actual kind. The quiet belief that the avoidant will come back when they are ready, and that their silence is not a rejection. That kind of trust disrupts everything the avoidant expects from closeness. They are used to being chased or punished for needing space. When neither happens, they do not feel abandoned, they feel respected. And they come back more open than they would have if any pressure had been applied at all. The fourth habit is setting boundaries without creating chaos. Avoidants have an internal script they expect most relationships to follow. They pull away, the other person escalates. The emotional temperature rises. Everything becomes expensive and exhausting, and they feel, once again, that closeness always ends in a mess. When someone breaks that script by responding to distance with calm, by saying, I need some time to think too, let's come back to this later, and actually meaning it with no hidden punishment on the other side, the avoidance entire predictive model gets thrown off. And instead of that being threatening, it becomes fascinating. This person does not follow the pattern. They regulate themselves. They have their own emotional ground to stand on. To an avoidant who is always bracing for the explosion that makes leaving feel justified, encountering someone who simply never explodes is one of the most disarming experiences they can have. Their defenses were built for a specific kind of storm. When the storm never comes, they do not know what to do with the calm. Eventually, they stop waiting for it and start living in it. The fifth habit is making connection feel easy without making it feel meaningless. Avoidants have spent years associating closeness with labor. Someone always needs more. Something always needs to be processed. The relationship is always a project with unfinished emotional homework. So when someone shows up and being around them just feels light, a message that says, this made me think of you, with no expectation attached, a plan that has an easy way out, a conversation that ends without anyone needing to debrief it. The avoidance nervous system does something it rarely gets to do. It rests, and because it rests, it stops rationing closeness. The avoidant stops calculating how much of themselves they can afford to give before it costs too much. They start actually looking forward to that person, not tolerating them, not managing them, genuinely wanting them around. For an avoidant, that shift is not small. It is the whole thing. And once they have felt it with one person, the absence of it everywhere else becomes very loud. None of these habits are tricks. They are not techniques you perform until the avoidant finally cracks. They are expressions of something real, emotional security, self-possession, and a genuine lack of need to control how another person shows up. Avoidants do not become addicted to people who are perfect. They become addicted to people who are settled, people who do not need them to be different in order to feel okay. That kind of presence is rarer than most people realize, and to an avoidant nervous system that has been on high alert for most of its life, it feels less like attraction and more like coming home. The question worth sitting with is not just how to communicate this way with an avoidant, but whether the avoidant in your life is offering you even a fraction of the same safety in return. Because you deserve that too. Not eventually. Now.